We're deep into the league, and if you're like me, then you'd much rather play PoE2 than the new PoE1 league. Most people have played all of the boring old meta builds though, and are looking for something new. And you're in luck, because that's exactly what we'll be covering. Some insanely fun, busted off-meta builds that barely anyone's playing. So without further yapping, let's get started, shall we? First up, we've got a build that's unlike pretty much anything else I've played this league. Most bow builds have you standing still, charging attacks, and doing all the work yourself. This one says, nah, fuck that. Instead, you're constantly dodge rolling around the map, spawning Mirage archers that automatically fire perfect timing snipes for you. Eventually, you've got 6 of these guys running around, all machine gunning exploding snipes into anything unfortunate enough to still be alive. It honestly feels less like you're playing an archer, and more like you're commanding your own firing squad. The really clever interaction here is how Mirage Archer works with Snipe. Normally, Snipe is a channeling skill where you need to release it inside a perfect timing window to get the massive explosion and bonus damage. The funny part is that Mirage Archers are actually incredibly consistent at hitting that timing automatically, meaning you're getting fully empowered snipes without having to channel anything yourself. The build then stacks huge amounts of cooldown recovery and skill effect duration, letting those Mirage Archers stick around for over 20 seconds while reducing their cooldown to just over 3. So instead of constantly replacing them, you're gradually building up an army until you've got 6 archers unloading on enemies at once. Gameplay-wise, it's surprisingly relaxed. Your dodge roll isn't just your defensive tool anymore. It's also your main damage and movement button. Between rolls, you'll occasionally throw down Tornado Shot, which causes all those snipes to duplicate into even more projectiles covering the entire screen. On top of that, you can weapon swap into a Talisman for Pounce, letting you instantly jump into werewolf form and fly around the map with ridiculous movement speed. It's honestly one of the smoothest bow mappers I've seen. What really surprised me though is just how tanky this thing is. You normally don't associate bow builds with standing in the middle of juiced expeditions, but this character stacks massive armor, evasion, and deflection, takes no extra damage from critical strikes. And thanks to Refutation having almost permanent uptime, you're blocking practically everything on top of that. J-Mac literally built this character for some of the hardest expedition content in the game, and 200% Delirium feels like a joke in comparison. Now, this definitely isn't your 10 Divine budget mapper. The endgame version gets fairly expensive, especially if you want to min-max the cooldown setup and defensive layers. But the core idea itself is incredibly unique, doesn't require much to get started, and honestly, it's one of the coolest uses of Mirage Archer I've seen in PoE2 so far. So if you're looking for something that plays completely differently from every other bow build, has fantastic mapping, incredible survivability, and lets your own AI army do most of the killing while you casually roll around pretending you're helping, this one's absolutely worth checking out. Next up is probably the most beautiful build on this list by Josiah Yeet. And holy shit, has this guy been cooking this league. If you're looking for top-tier off-meta builds, just go to his channel and pick one. I've tried a bunch of his builds, and they're smooth as hell. Alright enough glazing. What the hell am I watching here? Well, it's a perfect strike build, using a chain reaction that wipes out an entire screen of monsters. The entire build revolves around landing one massive perfect strike. Instead of relying on a bunch of different skills or complicated setups, you simply blink into a pack, tap perfect strike, and let the build do the rest. It lands a huge ignite that then gets converted into chaos damage through Black Flame, followed by automatically triggering Contagion through cast on Elemental Ailment. And suddenly, the entire screen is melting from a single hit. It's one of those interactions that just feels incredibly satisfying once everything starts chaining together. What makes this build even cooler is that your initial hit actually matters. Most Ignite builds barely tickle enemies before the damage over time takes over. But Perfect Strike hits like an absolute truck. If something survives the Ignite or happens to be resistant against it, you can often just smash it with another Perfect Strike instead. That gives the build a really nice balance between huge burst damage and incredible clear speed. The playstyle is ridiculously smooth. Blink into a pack, delete it, blink into the next one, and repeat. It's really just a one-button build. Entire groups of monsters continue dying behind you as Contagion keeps spreading your Chaos Ignite like AIDS across the map. So you're almost always moving forward instead of waiting for enemies to finish dying. The result is a build that's both fast and surprisingly low effort to play with fast map clears. It also packs far more defenses than you'd expect. Running a shield gives you a huge amount of armor and block. Opportunity Flask constantly tops off your life every time you hit a perfect timing attack, and being fully curse immune removes one of the biggest annoyances by preventing temporal chains from messing with your attack timing. Another thing I really like is that it doesn't depend on expensive chase items just to function. It's already clearing heavily juiced expeditions without Mage Blood or Headhunter, which means there's still plenty of room to scale the build if you decide to invest more later on. So if you're looking for a build that combines satisfying melee hits, absurd chain reactions, crazy mobility with Blink, and enough survivability to comfortably farm juiced endgame content without requiring you to put a down payment on your house or sell out your wife on OnlyFans, the Eraser is easily one of the coolest off-meta builds I've seen this league. Next up, we have Glacial Bolt Gemling, and there are two different versions worth looking at. Both of them are absolutely fantastic and some of the best fun I've ever had in this game. Both builds use Glacial Bolt to create huge lines of ice crystals, which then explode across nearly the entire screen. The main difference is how they approach movement, investment, and endgame content. Phylaris runs the extreme speed version. Unfortunately, he plays on a fucking potato, so the footage doesn't quite give the build's beauty justice, but you'll just have to squint your eyes and imagine. His setup combines Glacial Bolt with Whirling Slash, allowing you to spin through your own crystals and destroy them while moving toward the next pack. This makes the build feel much more like a melee speed mapper than a traditional crossbow build. With enough attack speed, Whirling Slash becomes incredibly fast, and because it also generates rage, it can free up Spirit for additional defensive buffs. The downside is that this version is more specialized. You need enough damage to clear with very few Glacial Bolts, a large amount of attack speed, and a higher budget before the setup really starts to make sense. So this is mainly for players who already have a strong Glacial Bolt character and want to push mapping speed as far as possible. Josiah Yeat's version stays closer to the traditional ranged playstyle. Instead of manually spinning through the crystals, it uses Wolves, Verizian, Manifestations, and Cast on Elemental Ailment to destroy them automatically. This lets you keep firing from range, while the build handles most of the crystal breaking for you. His setup also offers a much clearer progression path. You can start with a relatively affordable life-based version, then transition into Ward, Mage Blood, or Headhunter, depending on your budget and the content you want to farm. The Headhunter version is especially strong for grand expeditions and other content filled with rare monsters, while the Mage Blood version offers more consistent defense, so Josiah's version is the better choice for most players. It is cheaper to start, easier to progress, and more flexible. Phylaris' version is the endgame speed option. It is more expensive and demanding, but once your damage is already solved, Whirling Slash turns the build into one of the fastest mappers in the game. Both versions use the same powerful Glacial Bolt core, but they serve different players. I'll leave links to both setups below. Next up, we have, yeah, you guessed it, another Gemling build. A quick disclaimer though, if you're prone to epileptic seizures, then close your eyes, because, well, see for yourself. The entire screen fills with lightning arrows. Tornado shot splits them in every direction, and then everything detonates a second later in one massive chain reaction. The core idea is to stack as many Stormcaller arrows as possible. I played this skill a lot last league, but when paired with the new Gemling quality, the build is finally good as fuck. Advanced Thaumaturgy is especially important here because additional gem quality gives Stormcaller arrow another projectile for every 10% quality. At 40% quality, you gain 4 additional arrows before even accounting for surpassing chance. And since it's the explosion, rather than the projectiles dealing damage, you'll be able to shotgun all the damage they provide. The build then pushes surpassing chance to at least 300%, uses barrage to repeat the attack, and stacks charge preservation effects so barrage can regularly fire 7, 8, or sometimes even 12 repeated attacks. When all of those arrows pass through tornado shot, they split again, which is why the screen suddenly becomes completely covered in projectiles. There is one major drawback though. Stormcaller arrow has a delayed detonation. You fire the arrows, wait roughly a second, and only then does the damage arrive. That makes it less immediate than the strongest meta builds, but it also creates a very distinctive rhythm. You cover the area in arrows, move forward, and everything behind you explodes. And just like the previous builds, we're of course using Frost Wall for damage scaling. Cast on Elemental Ailment automatically creates frost walls, and Verglass grants extra cold damage whenever those crystals are destroyed based on their maximum life. Because the walls can reach around 245,000 life, this becomes a huge source of additional cold damage without requiring you to manually cast anything. When it comes to defenses, the build utilizes Energy Shield, Armor, and Evasion. This in turn also allows us to rock a low-life version for some additional synergies. The result is a tanky build indeed. It can clear difficult expeditions and even 6-player 200% Delirium, although it is still more of an expensive passion project than an efficient budget build. To play the build, you really need a strong bow and quiver, high surpassing chance, plenty of gem quality, reliable frenzy generation, and a few expensive charge preservation pieces before barrage really starts doing what the build is designed around. So, while not a recommended build for dogshit newbies, it's something to go for once you have a bit more currency to invest. But if you have already played the obvious meta builds and want something that looks completely different, has enough damage for essentially all content, and turns every map into a lightning fireworks display, Stormcaller Arrow is easily one of the most unique builds on this list. Just take a break every now and then, so you don't blow your brain out from all the lightning explosions. And finally, we have my favorite build on this list, Ulf's Infinite Hammer Bonker. If you've ever wanted to play a true bonk build in Path of Exile 2, this is probably as close as it gets. Most Hammer of the Gods builds spend half their time waiting for glory. This one doesn't. Thanks to Gemling's quality scaling, you can push Hammer of the Gods above a 100% chance not to consume glory. Once you've generated your initial glory with Fury of the King, you simply keep bonking, aka infinite bonk technology. Giant hammers raining from the sky over and over again while entire packs disappear in a single hit. And unlike most slow slam builds, this one's pretty fast. Hammer of the Gods normally has a massive delay before it lands, but by stacking reduced skill duration, the hammer becomes almost instant. Combined with 100 rage for huge attack speed, The build feels far more fluid than you'd expect from such a massive skill. It also scales damage in some really clever ways. Instead of only focusing on physical damage, it converts everything into cold with Ulrovasara, abuses Herald of Ice for chain explosions, stacks Rage for over 100% more damage, and even adds a Chaos package with Despair and Permanent Wither in the latest version for even more scaling. And defensively, it's super tanky. It combines armor, evasion, and a surprisingly large energy shield pool through Chaos Inoculation, making it tanky enough for juiced 8-mod maps, Delirium, Simulacrums, Citadel bosses, you name it. The downside is that this definitely isn't a starter. You need a lot of quality scaling, several specific uniques, corrupted items, and expensive jewels before the build really comes together. But once it does, you're constantly dropping giant hammers from the sky while flying through maps. It's one of the most creative Gemling builds I've seen this league, and if you enjoy melee builds that completely break the normal rules of the game, this is an incredibly satisfying way to end the list. With that said, I'm done with this shit. Drop a sub, check out all of the creators, and I'll see you in the next one.